Hi, my name is Dalen Williams, and today I'm going to be teaching you about traumatic brain injuries, the characteristics of this disability, and tips for us as future educators, and how we can help our students who may be diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury best succeed in the general education classroom. So, first, I want to talk about what is a traumatic brain injury. And according to IDEA, it states that a TBI is an acquired injury to the brain caused by an external physical force, resulting in total or partial functional disability or psychosocial impairment, or both, that adversely affects a child's educational performance. The term applies to open or closed head injuries resulting in impairments in one or more areas, such as cognition, language, memory, attention, reasoning, abstract thinking, judgment, problem solving, sensory, perceptual, and motor abilities, psychosocial behavior, physical functions, information processing, and speech. The term does not apply to brain injuries that are congenital or degenerative, or to brain injuries induced by birth trauma. It's important to remember that after an accident resulting in a TBI, bones in the child as well as organs may be healed, but the brain will not be. And so the consequences of that are hard to see. And so I want to show a quick video by the NIH that talks a little bit more about traumatic brain injury in kids.
Traumatic brain injury, or TBI, is an injury that disrupts the brain and its activity. TBI can result from a blow to the head, a jolt of the brain, or an object that goes through the skull. In the United States each year, 1.7 million people sustain a traumatic brain injury. Each of these heads represents 20,000 people. Of the 1.7 million injured, 50,000 people die and more than 250,000 are hospitalized. TBI can be mild to severe. Severe TBI can lead to permanent disability and even death. 75% of brain injuries are mild, meaning they are not life-threatening. In the U.S., most brain injuries in children, 55%, are caused by falls. 24% are caused by being hit in the head with an object like a soccer ball. Among children older than 5, car accidents are the number one cause of TBI-related death. Assault is the number one cause of TBI-related death in those younger than 5. But even mild brain injury, like a concussion, can seriously affect daily activities. Mild TBI can cause problems with the child's speaking or understanding, movement, thinking or memory, and personality or mood. We can all help reduce the risk of TBI in children.
So the video talked a little bit about how common traumatic brain injuries are, but I just wanted to restate that 1.7 million people are diagnosed with a TBI each year. And a lot of those numbers are also for children between the ages of 0 to 19, as you can see on this slide. And so as teachers, we will most likely have to help some students who deal with mild to severe traumatic brain injuries, and so it's important for us to learn how to help them. It's important as well for us to know the signs of a traumatic brain injury so that we can learn how to adjust and adapt our curriculum and our teaching to best help them. So some physical disabilities a student may suffer from are trouble speaking, hearing, and seeing, or using any of their other senses. They may have headaches and tire easily. They may suffer from muscle spasticity, which means that their muscles seize up quickly and then release, or entire seizures, which would cause for trouble writing or drawing, or things using the muscles in their hands or their arms. They may also have trouble walking or balancing and using their whole bodies, or some may even suffer from paralysis. Some other students will have difficulties thinking. They may have short-term memory problems or memory loss, as well as problems with long-term memory, depending on what areas of their brain were affected in the accident. They could have trouble concentrating, paying attention for a while, staying focused, talking and listening with others, as well as reading and writing to communicate. And they may also have trouble processing the information that they're taught, as well as with sequencing and judgment, and abstract thinking as well as they get older. There are other signs to look out for with their peers, socially and emotionally, such as changes in their mood. They could suffer from anxiety, depression, anger, and frustration. And this could also be caused by the fact that they may have no control over their emotions, such as excessive laughing or crying, just going from one end of the spectrum to another without a real explanation. And that, I'm sure, could be very frustrating for those students. Because of that, they may have trouble relating to others, and this could cause little to no motivation. And so it's important for us to help them find that self-motivation in the classroom and the environment that we create for them. So remember that a student may or may not have all of the difficulties listed here. Traumatic brain injuries can range from mild to severe. And also remember that changes in the difficulties a student experiences are common as they grow and develop. New difficulties may be discovered down the road, especially as they have to learn new things, try new ways to think and communicate. So those areas of the brain may not have been as used before, and as they continue to grow and learn, we may see that they have been affected as well. And so I want to show a part from this video about a student who did suffer from a traumatic brain injury and his experience returning to school after the accident.
Education is an important asset to the mind of a child. Parents of these children. Learning is an intensive process, not to mention for those with a traumatic brain injury. And for children, it's important that proper attention is given to adapt to these problems. Travis Jester was 7 years old when he was diagnosed with having a traumatic brain injury. And now Travis just celebrated his 21st birthday and explains what he remembers from that day.
The only thing I remember is coming home from school and running out into the backyard and sitting on top of logs, and that's all I remember.
14 years ago, after returning home from school, Travis and his brother Jeff went to the backyard just like any other day. Jeff began shooting his new BB gun through knotholes, but one bounced off and hit Travis in his left temple. Travis's mom, Desiree, describes her initial reaction.
I just remember him laying upside down in a wood pile and me, just thinking, oh my God, and screaming for somebody to help. Nobody was home. Husband wasn't home. The neighbors weren't home.
After being taken to Peninsula Regional Medical Center, they determined that the bullet had gone through Travis's brain and would affect his emotional responses. He was then flown to Johns Hopkins and sent to the intensive care unit, which he was in for 2.5 weeks until he was able to breathe on his own. Then Travis and his family moved to Kennedy Krieger Institute, where he stayed for 3 months. Desiree reflects on the emotional state of her son after suffering from a TBI.
So if he had to lift his arm to eat, that made him cry. If he had to go to the bathroom, that made him cry. But once he kind of got over that hump, it just kind of happened. He always smiled and always just, whatever he had to do, he did it.
Memory problems like recalling new material, processing information, and behavioral performance are just a few of the cognitive effects of a TBI. In Travis's case, being reintroduced to Ocean City Elementary School was about being a part of the educational environment, not necessarily retaining the information. Travis and Desiree described the difficulty of going back to school.
It felt really weird, because I just went through a long process, so I didn't even feel like I was even ready to go back to school.
He only went to school like a couple of days a week, just to get him back to his friends, but he wasn't doing anything really in the classroom. He was doing a lot of physical therapy and speech therapy, and any kind of therapy they had to offer, they did.
Children can not only face difficulties in learning, but other behavioral and social challenges as well. Some parents may seek out the help of a speech and language therapist to help their child. These therapists help patients learn strategies for improving memory, problem solving, and reasoning, as well as general communication skills.
All right. So I really like in that video how it talks about the struggles that student faced, and how as they came back to the classroom, it was a long and slow process, and they weren't necessarily involved in the curriculum right away, but just getting them adjusted to coming back to school and dealing with the changes in their environment. and dealing with the new problems that they're facing in an environment that used to be pretty normal for them. And so I want to talk about some classroom strategies that we can use in our classroom to help a student that may be returning from a traumatic brain injury, or a student who was diagnosed with one previously and is now in our classroom. It's important to remember that the educational and emotional needs of that student are most likely very different than before their accident. And so we need to plan carefully for that child's return to school if we're dealing with a student who had an accident while they are in our classroom. We need to work with their parents, their doctors, and therapists when possible to know what's going to be best for them. We need to create a quiet and dark space for the student if possible, so that when they do experience those headaches or other problems, that they have a space where they can go and rest their mind from a lot of sensory experiences. Allow more time for schoolwork and tests. Give directions one step at a time, providing written directions for them as well. It's important to teach them new skills and ensure that they've learned those skills, rather than just moving on to the next one if they're frustrated with that one. Providing consistent routines and warning them of any changes, as well as showing them how to use a schedule and keep track of their assignments, especially if they have trouble remembering them. And most importantly, be flexible and patient. And finally, remember that therapy for speech and language or physical and motor skills should not be thought of as separate from academics. Many times they can be combined. If we take the time to seek out and work with their doctors and therapists, we may know how to merge the curriculum and therapy goals into tasks and activities that can cover both. We also need to fit to the student into the routine of the day, identifying where problems could occur, where therapy is needed, such as walking to the cafeteria for lunch or communicating with other students, so that we can work with their physical therapists and speech and language therapists when possible and when needed. We can try teaching the process of an activity instead of focusing on the performance of the activity. And we need to remember to start slow and build skills, because the student will also need to start slow and rebuild their ability and endurance in the classroom. And we can take time to brainstorm with therapists again about how to incorporate therapy into the classroom when possible. And I provided a link there that I thought was very helpful and that I got some of this information in, especially when we have a student who is returning to our classroom after an accident. I hope that this video was helpful and that you can use this in your future as you work with students who may be diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury.